We just announced that we're going to do a follow-up of 828. This time it's not going to be in Washington, it's going to be in Jerusalem. And we haven't announced the exact date yet, but we will, I believe, by Friday. Shortly after midnight this past Tuesday, when I was in Jerusalem, I met with the mayor of Jerusalem at Ben Gurion International Airport, and I laid out an overview of what I wanted to do in his city. If he was shocked, he didn't show it. If he thought I was being overly ambitious or a little nuts, he didn't hint at it. All he said to me was, Jerusalem will be your partner in making it happen. We are grateful that he happens to be here today. Nir Barkat is the mayor of Jerusalem. Welcome, Mr. Mayor. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Wonderful being here.
You know, it was really funny because we started putting this together, and somebody said to me, it'll never happen. It can never happen. First of all, you're going to have to get with the mayor. And I said, he happens to be on my flight going back to New York. And we happened to meet there at the airport. I want to talk to you a little bit about the city of Jerusalem and what we're kind of doing future news here tonight. Because I think the world is pushing Israel, and the world is just going to start going towards this two-state solution, which you kind of say is kind of a false premise.
Well, let's focus on Jerusalem as an example. Jerusalem, since the reunification of the city in '67, is totally open for freedom of religion. The Jews manage the Jewish sites, the Muslim sites, the Christians manage the Christian sites. It was never like that. My goal and role is to open up Jerusalem for the benefit of the world to enjoy, to make sure people can come and taste the spiritualism, the holiness, the history, the culture. And indeed, we see a rise in the number of tourists and the excitement that tourists have in the city of Jerusalem. My vision is to develop that, to encourage more people to come peacefully to enjoy the international city the way it is today. It was never like that. God forbid.
If 1967, if I came to Jerusalem, I could not go in to the Church of the Sepulchre.
You had real serious trouble, and the Jews couldn't actually pray in the Temple Mount.
Right.
And so, and throughout the history of the different conquerors of Jerusalem, may it be the Jordanians, the British, the Turks, everybody, they've never kept freedom of religion the way Israel does. The government and municipality, and we will pursue that. It's part of our understanding that we would like to make sure Jerusalem is open for the benefit of the world to enjoy.
Okay, so a two-state solution. They cut, because if people see this, they say the old city of Jerusalem, but that's not Jerusalem. Jerusalem is huge and expanding. This is the old city. This is where the boundary is.
Well, sort of. You pointed right. Glenn, there's not one good example in the world of a city that was split that ever worked. It doesn't work. You know, I'm an entrepreneur in training, and I usually look for comparables, look to see how other cities in the world are successful, and we look at different role models in the world. Every city that, God forbid, was split never worked. It's dysfunctional. And we've proven in the last since the unification of the city in '67, that we've created a functional city, a strong city that is open for the benefit of the world to enjoy. The Arabs, most of the Muslims and Christians living in Jerusalem don't want to move to a Palestinian state. Right. They want to stay a united city.
Tiffany, what was that chart we had up last week? It's like 80% of all Arabs say they want Israeli rule in Jerusalem, right? Do you have that?
It's a big
for you, Glenn.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean it's
a big number.
It's a big number.
And that means that people know what's good for them. And I do strongly believe, I'm committed to help and serve the Muslim residents, the Christian residents, the Jewish residents. We have to make Jerusalem work better as a city.
Can I ask you, what is the rate of, because when you're over here in America, you think of Israel, and it's getting shelled, and buses are blowing up, and people are dying in restaurants. And you go over there, and I said this when I came back, I actually stood in my apartment and looked out over the city here in New York the next day, and I felt safer in Jerusalem than I did here for the one reason: everybody's aware. Everybody's aware. Everybody's been in the military, so everybody can help, and it doesn't matter what happens, so everybody can take action. Here, people are asleep. What is the rate of, describe Jerusalem on Violence.
Violence. If you take violence, for example, this is something that we naturally none of us like to discuss, but murders per every 100,000 people. We're by far the safest city with respect to Washington, D.C., Chicago, even New York. It's a safer city than New York. I remember we've compared notes, and per capita, you have less murders, and you put crime and terror together. We had 9 murders last year in Jerusalem, a population of 800,000 people, which is practically nothing relative to any other city.
How frequent is terror?
Well, I'll tell you, terror has become a global issue,
Yeah.
a global phenomenon. And people should look and understand sometimes things that are happening in Israel and in Jerusalem propagates to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
We now know how to deal with it in relatively very, very good. So we know how to improve quality of life of all residents. We know how to increase tourism. Tourism is up big time in Jerusalem, big numbers from year to year in the last few years. And I really welcome people. You know, all this political turmoil now in the Middle East does not affect Israel. We're a stable, peace-seeking island in the middle of a big minefield.
My problem has been when President Obama was running for president, he said, I'll sit down with anybody. I'll sit down with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And now you can't sit down with him.
Yeah,
I mean, you could sit down and say, look, do you agree on these principles? Because he's not an honest broker. Do you believe there's an honest broker that you could sit down with, the people of Israel could sit down with, and make a two-state solution? Or is it just a game to take more and more and more?
The Middle East, unfortunately, is not a win-win mentality. And the Western world, when it comes to our region, thinking win-win, give and take,
right.
Unfortunately, look at what happens. It doesn't work. When Israel withdrew from Gaza, lots of people said to me, oh, now you'll see how you'll get rewarded by showing that you may be making some steps for a deal. What happened is the Hamas took over democratically, similar to what you've said earlier, in a democratic way, similar to Nazi Germany. They want the destruction of Israel. That's their charter. So they're thinking now, in a salami-style negotiations, well, we first got Gaza. Let's piggyback ride on this trend against Israel in the world. Let's take over the Palestinian Authority, next phase, and then we'll be much better off to destruct Israel, because that's their charter and it has not changed. You see that by what they teach at schools. Generations upon generations are taught that it's fine to die, to kill us, to destruct Israel. You can't negotiate. It would be foolish to negotiate with somebody that wants your destruction.
Nobody
It's
ever
clear
would.
that there's no stopping mechanism to a deal.
Okay, let me just give you this poll number, then we're going to take a break. Last January, a poll was taken by the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion, conducted by Palestinians in Arab neighborhoods. Most Arabs living in Jerusalem actually prefer living under Israeli sovereignty over Palestinian authority. I ask you, they're no different. People are people. They're no different. If you can have peace and security, you want peace and security, especially if it's coupled with freedom of expression and freedom of religion. Back in just a second.